Welcome, friends, to the Washington, D.C. United Lodge of Theosophists. This is a special day for the United States as we are celebrating the date of the birth of our nation, which was on July 4, 1776. And today's talk is on the occult origins of the United States. Next week, please join us on Google Meet with a continuation of our discussions of answers to questions on the ocean of theosophy. If you are not already on our list, please email us at uoftdclodge@gmail.com and we will be happy to send you an invitation. As do other lodges of UOTs throughout the world, UOT DC follows the Uoft Declaration, which returned us to the original teachings of Theosophy as presented by H.P. Blavatsky. The Declaration states, "The policy of this lodge is independent devotion to the cause of Theosophy, without professing attachment to any theosophical organization. It is loyal to the great founders of the Theosophical movement, but does not concern itself with dissensions or differences of individual opinion. The work it has on hand and the end it keeps in view are too absorbing and too lofty to leave it the time or inclination to take part in side issues. That work and that end is the dissemination of the fundamental principles of the philosophy of Theosophy and the exemplification in practice of those principles through a truer realization of the self, a profounder conviction of universal brotherhood. And it holds that the unassailable basis for union among Theosophists, wherever and however situated, is similarity of aim, purpose, and teaching, and therefore has neither constitution, bylaws, nor officers, the sole bond between its associates being that basis. And it aims to disseminate this idea among Theosophists in the furtherance of unity. It regards as Theosophists all who are engaged in the true service of humanity without distinction of race, creed, sex, condition, or organization, and it welcomes to its association all those who are in accord with its declared purposes, who desire to fit themselves by study and otherwise to be the better able to help and teach others. The true Theosophist belongs to no cult or sect, yet belong to each and all." We're now going to have a devotional reading from the Bhagavad-Gita. Following will be our talk for the day. Thank you for joining us.
Introduction from the Bhagavad-Gita. Devotion by means of spiritual discernment. Among thousands of mortals, a single one perhaps strives for perfection, and among those who striving, perhaps a single one knows me as I am. Earth, water, fire, air, and akasha, manas, buddhi, and ahankara is the eightfold division of my nature. It is inferior. Know that my superior nature is different and is the knower. By it the universe is sustained. Learn that the whole of creation springs from these two as from a womb. I am the cause, I am the production, and the dissolution of the whole universe. There is none superior to me, O conqueror of wealth, and all things hang on me as precious gems upon a string. I am the tasting water, O son of Kunti, the light in the sun and moon, the mystic syllable Om in all the Vedas, sound in space, the masculine essence in men, the sweet smell in the earth, and the brightness in the fire. In all creatures I am the life, and the power of concentration in those whose minds are on the spirit. Know me, O son of Pritha. as the eternal seed of all creatures. I am the wisdom of the wise and the strength of the strong. I am the power of the strong, who in action are free from desire and longing. In all creatures I am desire regulated by moral fitness. Know also that the dispositions arising from the three qualities, sattva, rajas, and tamas, are from me. They are in me, but I am not in them. The whole world, being deluded by these dispositions, which are born of the three qualities, knoweth not me distinct from them, supreme, imperishable. For this, my divine illusion power, acting through the natural qualities, is difficult to surmount, and those only can surmount it who have recourse to me alone.
The government of the United States was established at a time of extreme dogmatism. Many who came to America for religious freedom were very tenacious of their own particular beliefs. So we might assume that the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution would contain much about religion, but this is not the case. In searching the Declaration, we find reference to nature and nature's God. The natural rights of man are specified, such as life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. In appealing to the British brethren, the Declaration appeals to their native justice and magnanimity. All reference to religion and Christianity or God's commands are left out. Article 6 of the Constitution says no religious test as a qualification for office shall ever be required, and the First Amendment prohibits an establishment of religion or restraint of its free exercise. Mr. Judge, number 1, noted that in 1774, the adepts influenced Thomas Paine, through the help of Benjamin Franklin, to come to America. Mr. Paine became the main instigator of the separation of the colonies from the British Crown. At the suggestion of Washington, Franklin, Jefferson, and other Freemasons, Paine wrote Common Sense. First published in December 1st, 1776, Paine indicated the focus should be on the importance of the content and not the name of the author. Common Sense embraced secularism and belief in human perfectibility in quotes such as, "We have it in our power to begin the world over again. O ye that love mankind, ye that dare oppose not only tyranny, but the tyrant, stand forth." George Washington later wrote to Paine, "I shall be exceedingly happy to see you. Your presence may remind Congress of your past service to this country, and if it is in my power to impress them, command my best exertions with freedom, as they will be rendered cheerfully by one who entertains a lively sense of the importance of your works." And again, in a letter to Madison, Washington said, "Can nothing be done in our assembly for poor Paine? Must the appearance and service of common sense continue to glide down the stream of time unrewarded by this country?" His writings certainly have had a powerful effect upon the public mind. Ought they not then to meet an adequate return? In the Age of Reason, Paine said, "I saw, or at least I thought I saw, a vast scene opening itself to the world in the affairs of America. And it appeared to me that unless the Americans changed the plan they were then pursuing and declared themselves independent, they would not only involve themselves in a multiplicity of new difficulties, but shut out the prospect that was then offering itself to mankind through their means." Further on, he says, there are two distinct classes of thoughts, those produced by reflection and those that bolt into the mind of their own accord. I have made it a rule to treat these voluntary visitors with civility, and it is from them I have acquired all the knowledge that I have. Mr. Judge added that these voluntary visitors were injected into Mr. Paine's brain by the adepts. Seeing that a new order of ages was about to commence, and that there was a new chance for freedom and the brotherhood of man, the adepts laid before the eyes of Thomas Paine, who they knew could be trusted, could stand almost alone with the lamp of truth in his hand, amidst others who, in times that tried men's souls, quaked with fear. The result was the Declaration and the Constitution. Number 4. The design of the reverse side of the U.S. Great Seal is a pyramid whose capstone is removed, with the blazing eye and a triangle over it, dazzling the sight. Above it are the words, "The heavens approve," while underneath appears the startling sentence, "A new order of ages." These are in Latin, and the interpretation of the Latin phrases are in the section to the right on this slide. The design of the seal symbolizes the building and firm founding of a new order of ages. It puts into form the idea which by means of a voluntary visitor was presented to the mind of Thomas Paine, of a vast scene opening itself, the beginning in America of a new order of ages. Mr. Judge went on to note that the Theosophical adepts hovered over Washington, Jefferson, and all the other brave Freemasons who dared to found a free government in the West, which could be pure from the dross of dogmatism. The adepts cleared their minds, inspired their pens, and left upon the great seal of this mighty nation the memorial of their presence. In his Rights of Man, Part 2, Chapter 2, Mr. Paine said, "No beginning could be made in Asia, Africa, or Europe to reform the political condition of man. She," meaning America, "made a stand not for herself alone, but for the world, and looked beyond the advantage she could receive." Mr. Paine also said that in Chapter 4, the case and circumstances of America present themselves as in the beginning of a world. There is a morning of reason rising upon man on the subject of government that has not appeared before. It addressed, quote, number 5, African slavery in America. March 8, 1775, in the beginning of a world. There is a morning of reason rising upon man on the subject of government that has not appeared before. Mr. Paine's first publication in this country addressed, quote, number 5, African slavery in America. March 8, 1775. He stated that some desperate wretches should be willing to steal and enslave men by violence and murder for gain is rather lamentable than strange, but that many civilized, nay, Christianized people should approve and be concerned in the savage practice is surprising, and still persists though it has been so often proved contrary to the light of nature, to every principle of justice and humanity, and even good policy, by a succession of eminent men and several late publications. Just a few weeks later, on April 14, 1775, the first anti-slavery society in America was formed in Philadelphia. Thomas Paine was a founding member, and Washington's army was more integrated than any American force up until the Vietnam War. Quotes of others about Mr. Paine. Number 6. History is to ascribe the American Revolution to Thomas Paine. 1776, John Adams said that. 2, he said, without the pen of Paine, the sword of Washington would have been wielded in vain. The third quote from Mr. Adams, I know not whether any man in the world has had more influence on its inhabitants or affairs of the last 30 years than Tom Paine. He said that 29 October 1805. Number 7, Napoleon Bonaparte said, quote, a statue of gold ought to be erected to you in every city in the universe. I assure you, I always sleep with the rights of man under my pillow. I desire you to honor me with your correspondence and advice. Number 8, Abraham Lincoln. I never tire of reading Tom Paine. Number 9, Thomas Alva Edison said, I consider Paine our greatest political thinker, as we have not advanced, and perhaps never shall advance, beyond the Declaration of the Constitution, so Paine has had no successors who extended his principles. Number 10. The first drafts of the Declaration of Independence were penned by Jefferson, but the words had already been used by or were strongly influenced by Paine. Number 11. Paine enlisted as a private, was made aide-de-camp to General Greene, and took part in various battles. Number 12. December 1776, quote, the first of a series of Paine's letters on the crisis started with, these are the times that try men's souls. On Christmas Eve, Washington had it read to the troops at Valley Forge. From then on, the war was won. The sword but followed out the furrows traced by Paine as the war went on. At each point where all seemed engulfed, another of the crisis pamphlets would appear. At each emptied moment, Paine filled once more the cup of courage. Thus, disgraced Paine gave grace to all, and spelled the final triumph out of the broken letters of defeat. Number 13. The Pennsylvania legislature made Paine its clerk. Paine was made secretary of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the Continental Congress. Number 14. In 1781, he was sent to France for a loan. Successful at that. In return, he organized the Bank of North America to raise money to feed and clothe the army. Number 15. He lived in France for most of the 1790s. 1791 and 92, Thomas Paine published parts 1 and 2 of The Rights of Man, a defense of the French Revolution. 1792, in England, He was indicted by the British as an outlaw, but he got out of England before they could arrest him. And number 17, he was elected to the French Assembly, even though he spoke no French. He voted against death for the king. He was in prison for 1 year. James Monroe got him released. Otherwise, he might have been there a lot longer. Number 18, 1794, he published The Age of Reason in France. And number 18, 1802, President Jefferson offered passage on a ship, Maryland, so he would be safe from British who were intent on arresting the chief instigator of the American Rebellion. He stayed at Monticello when he got into the States. After the war was over, Paine turned his energies toward perfecting those inventions for which, number 20. After the war was over, Paine turned his energies toward perfecting, number 20, inventions for which he afterward became famous. His most important invention was that of an iron bridge, the forerunner of our modern steel bridges. He also evolved the principle employed for the propulsion of the modern automobile and invented a smokeless candle which embodied the principle now known as a central draft burner. Sir Richard Phillips, who assisted Robert Fulton, often openly declared that Thomas Paine had the idea of applying steam to navigation before Fulton, although Fulton received all the credit for that. Back in 1790, Count de Saint-Germain had told his friend Franz Graffer that he had to go to London to prepare 2 new inventions which you will have in the next century, trains and steamboats. So it is highly probable that it is he who gave Paine his ideas on the subject, as Paine was in England most of that year. Paine was also a deep student of astronomy. Number 21. On June 8, 1809, at age 72, his starved and aged frame collapsed and Thomas Paine was dead. Paine's bones were later exhumed to be sent to the place of his birth, but have now disappeared. There is a plate in New York. It says, Memorial to Thomas Paine. A tablet in honor of Thomas Paine was unveiled on June 8th in New York City at the 3-story house at 59 Grove Street, which occupies the site of an earlier house in which Paine died in 1809. The date selected marked the 114th anniversary of the death of the author of Common Sense and the Rights of Man. The tablet, which is the first memorial to Thomas Paine in New York City, is a 14 by 9 inches in size. In the center is a 3/4 portrait of Paine. Above and at the sides of the head are inscribed 3 of his glorious sayings. Quote, "The world is my country." Quote, "All mankind are my brethren. To do good is my religion." At the top of the tablet is a symbolic map suggesting the United States, and at the right and left of the head are symbolic maps representing respectively the British Isles and France. Beneath the portrait is a small inscription, Thomas Paine, born 1737, died 1809, followed by the words, "I believe in one God and no more. In connection with this memorial, which is in line with and an expression of the purpose of H.P. Blavatsky, as stated in the preface to Isis Unveiled, he says, a restitution of borrowed robes and the vindication of glorious but culminated reputations, the following will be of interest. When Thomas Paine died, the house at 59 Grove Street was a frame dwelling with a large yard in the rear. Paine was very ill when he was removed there from his former residence, now 309 Bleecker Street. He was taken to 59 Grove Street in April 1809 by Madame Bonneville, who had befriended him in his days of poverty and illness in New York. He was buried at New Rochelle, but in 1819 his remains were carried to England by William Cobbett. But the monument which Cobbett planned to erect in his honor never was made. And Monsieur de Conway, in his Life of Paine, states that in 1836 the bones of Thomas Paine, with Cobbett's possessions, were taken charge of by a receiver, and after passing through various hands, finally disappeared. As to his bones, no man knows the place of their rest to this day, says Mr. Conway. Had Paine's ardent world patriotism prevailed over the national patriotism of Washington, it was written that we would have been spared the War of 1812 and the Great War of 1914, World War I. Number 22, Paine's profession of faith. The world is my country, to do good is my religion. His faith was centered on the belief of a first cause eternally existing and of a universe governed by law. Paine argued for the existence of God as a supreme cause, affirming that the external motion of matter is not an inherent property of matter, but must be derived from a superior source. His idea of religion was one which would bind all men together in one great brotherhood. In 1797, Paine founded in Paris an ethical society which promulgated a religion of humanity, called the Society of Theoponialists. The Theoponialists regarded nature as the only reliable book on theology. Paine believed that the universe is governed by immutable laws. A miracle, therefore, was not conceivable. The God he worshipped was the first cause eternally existing, of a nature totally different to any material existence we know of, and by the power of which all things exist. Paine showed from history that the age of ignorance commenced with the Christian system. The expression of such thoughts caused Paine to be called an infidel. Christian writers have claimed that Paine died a drunkard, and that on his deathbed he confessed his error in attacking religious dogma. Such lies have long since been disproved, but are still pernicious among us. It is our responsibility as Theosophists to defend great ones like Thomas Paine, whose reputations have been maligned. The absence of the Christian God from the Declaration of Independence and from the Constitution of the United States is due to the influence of Thomas Paine. Religious freedom throughout this broad land, where sects thrive but liberty of conscience still prevails, is due to Thomas Paine. The founding of the American Republic, which obviously formed part of the work of the Theosophical movement, was an attempt to prepare a place where thought might be free from dogmatic religious prejudice and bigotry. From its conception, the United States has had a leading role in the great drama of human evolution. Number 23. Washington and Paine were the creators of this republic. Abraham Lincoln was its preserver. Americans of the present and coming generation will either be its regenerators or its destroyers. From an American experiment by Mr. Judge, we found that the Theosophical Society was formed with the object of forming a nucleus of universal brotherhood. A repetition in the purely moral side of the Declaration. The Theosophical experiment of the present century is a product of the soil of America. In her 5 messages to the American Theosophist, HPB said she was proud to be a citizen of the United States and that our karma as a nation had brought Theosophy home to us. In the 4th message, written just before her death, she gave us the method by which the country might be saved. Be Theosophists, work for Theosophy, Theosophy first and Theosophy last, for its practical realization alone can save the Western world from that selfish and unbrotherly feeling that now divides race from race, one nation from the other, and from that hatred of class and social considerations that are the curse and disgrace of so-called Christian peoples. Theosophy alone can save it from sinking entirely into the mere luxurious materialism which it will decay and putrefy as civilizations have done. In your hands, brothers, is placed in trust the welfare of the coming century. And great as it is the trust, so great also is the responsibility. And that trust and responsibility continues to be in our hands, whether or not we have ever heard the word Theosophy. Thank you, and happy July 4th to all.